Well, he was supposed to come home on Valentine's Day, and he died on Valentine's Day. I don't think people realize how horrible it is to lose a spouse, partner, loved one. I mean, until you go through that, you don't. When I was a teenager, I wanted to be an actor, and then I was sexually abused, raped, and I changed paths. I could not do that because I'm not going to go out in the world and be an actor and unveil myself when I had this terrible pain inside. So really what happened to me is that
Today's guest is Dr. Heather Herington in Canada. Dr. Heather is a naturopathic medical doctor and homeopath. She is an expert in trauma and difficult to treat conditions by using a two-pronged approach, balancing the biochemistry and telling or revising the story or event. She is also a writer of non-fiction, fiction, librettos and radio plays, and a performer on stage and voiceovers. She believes in the power of the expressive arts to heal psychological trauma, chronic pain, autoimmune disorders, and addiction, amongst other conditions and diseases. She also has a podcast called Dr. Heather Unleashed, which I highly recommend that you check out. And also a big thank you to Mickey and Kim Elia from Whole Health Now and the Introducing Homeopathy documentary. They also have a organization called Global Natural Health Solutions, which Dr. Heather is part of. So thank you so much for putting us in touch. You can get hold of Dr. Heather at drheatherherington.com. You can also find her podcast, Dr. Heather Uncensored, on Buzzsprout and most other podcasting platforms. You can find her on Instagram at drheatherherington.com. I hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to the Homeopathy Hangout Podcast, where we discuss all things homeopathy from around the world. And now our mum and your host, Eugenie Kruger.
Hello, homies, and welcome back to Homeopathy Hangout, where today we get to hang out with Dr. Heather Herington. Welcome to the show, Heather.
thank you so much, Eugenie. So happy to be here.
Oh, it's lovely to have you on, and not only just because we happen to be like color coordinated today, the same idea when we got dressed.
And our bangs.
Yeah, and the bangs. But also, I always get excited when I interview somebody that's got good podcasting equipment, because at the end of the day, you know, even though we're on YouTube and Rumble, people do mostly listen to audio. And if you've got great audio, it makes such a big difference, because you have your own podcast called Dr. Heather Uncensored, which we're going to be talking about. But we have a tradition on this podcast. All of our guests have to tell us how you were first introduced to homeopathy.
Well, that's really taken me back a long time. Before I went to Bastyr University, or then it was Bastyr College of Naturopathic Medicine, I was in Ontario to the very first naturopathic medical school in Canada, in Kitchener, Ontario. And it just happened to be that this fellow, I think I had the flu, and he started trying all these remedies on me, and he was so earnest. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. So he had all these little bottles, and he was telling me. And I had no skepticism at all. I was like, okay, bring it on. It sounds really good. I want to know more about this. So that's really where it started. And then I went to Bastyr in Seattle, Washington, and I was lucky enough to be taught by Dr. Robin Murphy, who was amazing. And it would be a Monday night class. And I was a single mom at the time, but my daughter was actually closer to your area, and I was able to go out Monday nights, and that was extraordinary too. So it was those two things I remember. But I just was swept into it. I loved it so much. I just felt like, I never even questioned it, which is maybe because I was so young. I'm not sure.
Wow, amazing. Well, Robin's, two of his books are right here beside me. I never had the privilege of meeting him in person, but
he was so sweet.
Yeah,
so
I've
lovely.
only ever heard incredible things about him.
Yeah,
Marcus
so
Fernandez,
sad.
whose school I'm running a hub of here in Australia, he was mentored by Robin as well. So he always speaks about him with the greatest reverence. And I'm sure Robin is right here in spirit with all of us, like helping us. And his legend lives on when we're using his repertories and materia medicas. And all these sorts.
I remember he said, and it was funny because I was a feminist, and he was like, a young maiden's tears. You know, how, and I was like, a young maiden's tear, what happened to the young man? You know, it was just, I just remember those kind of, but it did, even though I was kind of like, it was like, wow, what a beautiful image. So I remember that about him.
Well, we have some interesting things to have a chat about today, and I reckon we just launch straight into it. We've got lots of stuff to talk about, but and I'm trying to think how we got in touch, but I think it was Kim Elia and Mickey that put us in touch with each other. Oh, excellent.
I'm part of that global health
yes
natural solutions.
Yeah, Global Natural Health
GHNS.
Solutions. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that they put us in touch. And I had a quick little read, but you were a naturopathic doctor and you're not anymore, right?
No, I
You're not,
am.
oh, you are, but you're not allowed
But
to
I'm not
practice anymore?
exactly.
Okay, so
I
talk to
just
us
moved.
about that. How did that come
Okay.
about?
So I had a clinic in Vancouver, Canada. I was number 50 in British Columbia in terms of, naturopathic doctors that they had, you were licensed. And I met my husband and we moved to Los Angeles because he was a composer and I wanted to write musicals, either becoming a naturopathic pediatrician, which would also be a homeopathic pediatrician, or we would start writing this musical for children about anxiety. And we have that, The Calling Hour, children's musical. But what happened was I was there for many years and came back because the hospital killed him and he passed away 3 years ago. So I came back to be with my family. And all of a sudden, I was practicing here for, I think it was about 12 years. They wouldn't let me practice without doing all the exams over again. And that's thousands of dollars and a lot of time. And I was like, wait a second, I'm on my bucket list now. I really want to get back. I love acting. I love doing voiceovers. How do I do this? And also, really what was the key pullback from that was that they had forced people to get the injection. And I had actually have a very good friend of mine's wife died. A very good friend of mine got cancer from the jab. And I was just like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't need to be a health professional again, licensed. I can just do my workshops because I used to do workshops called Moving to Healing and on one of the islands off with taking my patients there. So that's what I'm in the middle of doing now is just, it's the next chapter in my life. People say, oh yeah, you're going to have another life. And I didn't want to, but now I can see, yes, I really want to work with people, teaching them how to do radio plays based on their own trauma, their own addictions. And I'm just starting to connect with different rehab centers because what's happened to me over the years is because I love to act, I love doing voiceovers. You'll hear them on that
on your podcast,
on my podcast.
Yeah, they're great. It's really
radio play.
It's really fun to listen to. So Dr. Heather Uncensored.
Great.
Yeah, I was wondering,
so
is that you doing all the voices or
yes,
you kind of get transported into like a movie scene almost. It's really great to listen to.
That.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. It was so tragic. It was so sad. And it took me quite a long time to get myself together because at first I was really like people say, wow, you're just doing so well after his dying. But really then I just didn't. And so then I thought, well, I had done a show about my sexual abuse for stage, and it was a solo show. And it was extraordinary how that healed me. And that's another story in itself. But I thought, okay, I was working with Jessica Lynn Johnson, who's a solo acting coach, and then this other performer, Mira Wilder. And Mira said to me one day, well, instead of, taking your show, the sexual abuse, longer, what about, I'm hearing about this love affair with your husband, why don't you, and the tragedy of it, why not do that? So I changed the whole show to start writing about that. And then I thought, well, I really want to incorporate his vocal tunes. I'd already made an album of his instrumental tunes called, Sophie's Heart, and that's Avi Noam Gross. And so I was just healing, and I was just creating these characters. I had always done Luena, and I had done Ethel, and I had done Sylvie. But I brought in Helen Arendt, who's I don't know if you've heard of her, but she was like one of the major philosophers in the 20th century. And she was a German, Jewish, American who wrote The Origins of Totalitarianism and was writing about what was happening to us, which we see now so clearly. So I loved being Hannah. And then, of course, I had to be Big Pharma. So I had that voice. Let's see, now is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There was somebody else. I guess myself. So I also had myself, and I called myself Lula. Putting Avi's songs every 5 pages or whatever it was, which turned out to be, I think there's 7 or 8 songs, mostly sung by him as well. And I didn't realize that I was just going to sing these songs. I don't know how I was going to do that in terms of, but this is just so much more musical in terms of because he's got the piano, he's playing the piano, and he's singing these songs. I was able to find them digging into the computer. So I think, I'm really happy with it. I really am. And I'm certainly open to critical feedback. I think that's so important. But I just wanted a fun way to tell this horrible story. And that's the story of my husband who, I don't know why. We had medical and religious exemptions for COVID, but he had vaccines before, and it just was this woman, this young doctor who just, I don't know, he thought it was for smallpox because he was a music teacher as well, and he didn't mind getting that. Turned out to be DTaP. And so his chest started burning like a day or two later. And within a month, he couldn't breathe. And so the shortness of breath, we took him to the hospital. And that's what the story is, that we actually, and this is why I thought it would be very interesting for your listeners, because homeopathy got him better. He would have been fine if it wasn't for, should I tell the story?
Yeah, tell the story. Go for it.
Okay, so, but in the end, we already know the end of the story. He died because of a nurse jabbed his submandibular gland. And that night, he had been in the hospital almost 3 months at that point. And he texted me that night and he said, oh God, now I'm going to get all, sorry, just hang on. He said, they've jabbed my gland. And he's a musician. How the hell did he know that it was a gland that, pierced? And so the next day it started blowing up. And then he had gone from the ICU to the 6th floor of the hospital, to the 5th floor, to the 2nd floor, finally to the rehab. He just kept getting better over those 3 months. And so now, of course, they had to rush him to the hospital. And this was Kaiser in Los Angeles. And they pumped him up with steroids and everything. And within 2 days, he aspirated and died.
Why did they jab his gland? What was the reason for that?
The nurse. Oh, right. Missed a point there. So he had bronchiectasis, which is this guck in the bronchial. And so he was able the whole time, because the cardiogenic shock brought all this mucus up. And he must have had it there too. It was in his 70s. Things pile up. And he would have this suction wand, and he would do it himself in the hospitals. But in the rehab center, they wouldn't let him do it. It always had to be done by a nurse. And the nurse jabbed his submandibular gland. And he was supposed to come home on Valentine's Day, and he died on Valentine's Day. And what really bugs me, and I say it in the show, like, they never even said they were sorry. They never even, people would say to me, oh, you're just, you're going to get, this is a big lawsuit. Nobody would take the case. There was nothing I could do. There I am, alone. I really didn't have people to help me do that, or I wasn't asking people to come to the, I thought one lawyer was going to take the case. Waited about 5 weeks, and then they said, no, we're not going to do it. I mean, they have so many horrendous cases in Los Angeles. The way people, they're going to be on life support the rest of their lives, and so they really need that money to keep that person. Whereas for me, they thought, that's too bad, but he's in his 70s. I felt like that in Los Angeles, that people didn't really care. Once you got older, well, you're going to die. It's awful. I have to tell you, I really have loved coming back to North Vancouver. I have never experienced such a big community, or a community of people, maybe because a lot of these people are hiking all the time. It's good air in their lungs. I don't even ever like going to hospitals, but I had to go. I thought I had Lyme disease a few weeks ago. I was surprised how wonderful people are here. Whereas I find in Los Angeles, it was just there were some really fantastic people, don't get me wrong. They were absolutely fantastic social workers, nurses, doctors, and stuff. But basically, it just, I don't know if it's a bigger city or what, but anyways, it was a horrendous experience, obviously, for me. And then I just thought, after being there 8 months after that's happened, I just moved back to Canada because I needed to be with my family. I mean, I don't think people realize how horrible it is to lose a spouse, partner, loved one. I mean, until you go through that, you don't. For me, it was my husband and we created these books and these musicals, and he was my husband, but he was also my creative partner. So how do I even get the podcast going? So I finally did, and it was spotty. I didn't do it as much as I had done before, but, because he would say, no, that's not Ethel. Try her again.
Really?
That's not Sylvie. We were both from Quebec, and Sylvie was the Quebecois one, and I lived in Cape Breton Island, which is in Nova Scotia, way up in the Highlands, and that's where Ethel comes from. So, yeah.
But you're a big advocate for using expressive arts to heal.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, how did you, in what sort of way do you use it, and how do you recommend people get into that?
Well, I realized that naturopathic medicine, homeopathy, I love all of it. I love cold water cure. But I started working with people because I had worked in Nova Scotia. I don't know if people in Australia, Nova Scotia, it's a really beautiful province if you ever come to Canada on the East Coast. And it was a summer camp. And these people were from Eastern America, U.S. And what was her name? Eleanor Hamilton. She ran the Hamilton School. And she and what was her name? Ogden. I'll think of it. They were sexologists, and they would come up to the summer camp, and we would, it was just very new agey sort of, I hate saying that word, but it was very beautiful. It was right on the sea. And I learned how there were psychologists there and psychiatrists who were really alternative. And so I learned a lot before I went to Bastyr. So I had all this background in visualization and understanding the body-mind connection. And so once I got to Bastyr and once I got to my practice, actually, because, of course, those 4 years are pretty intense. In my practice, I just started doing visualization with people and trying to get, understand the body-mind connection. And then because I love to dance, and that's always been my way to heal. And now it's singing and, of course, acting. And I had that little character, Luena, the little girl, way back. She's been with me for a long time. And I knew what that could do. I knew I would work with people who were sexually abused because I had the Archdiocese of Vancouver asking me to treat people who had been sexually abused. So I had to figure out a way to do that. And sure, you can put them on, good nutrition and all that, but how do you dig deeper into the story? And so I did workshops on an island, Galliano Island. A friend of mine had a beautiful big house, and I would take, I don't know how many women there for a weekend or a week. And we wrote, we acted, we sang, we just supported each other. And I realized how important it was to do like a psychodrama kind of thing, is to just really act out what had happened to you. So over time, I've done several radio plays. I had Graves' disease several years ago, must be 10 or 12 years ago now. And I healed myself, and it was a really bad case. I was even told by an alternative medical doctor, no, you can't heal this naturally. Well, I did, because I understood that the bottom of it was the story. The story, and they knew that in the 1800s. Dr. Caleb Perry and Dr. Robert Graves, they knew that it came from some sort of grief. And they could see it. They wrote about it. If you look it up, you'll see that they knew that it was a terrible grief. That was the center of the whole. So when I got it, I thought, okay. And I was doing the research on it. I went, okay, what is my grief? And my grief was really that I was away from my daughter, who was starting to have babies in Canada. And here I was in Los Angeles, and I was so torn, and I was so upset. So once I allowed that stop, like my grandmother was Irish, and I always think that you suck on that melancholy. I have that kind of writer's tendency that you can suck on this melancholy. In some ways it feels good. But I went, nope, no more melancholy. I have to be happy now, because if I'm going to get healed from this, I've got to raise the vibration. So that's what I did, and I started realizing what would help. And there were a lot of things, of course, I did for that. Cold water therapy is really good, and homeopathy is amazing. But I also felt like, okay, this story that I'm actually going through, this is what's so important, and people need to talk about it. People need to create characters about it. And so I did do a Graves play. I think it's season 1, episode 12, Dr. Graves, We Can Heal Your Disease. And it was so fun because I love sound effects, and I love the character, the MAID. I can't find her now. Christina, if you hear this, please be in touch with me. She was so good. And then we had Dr. Graves and Dr. Perry, and it was very fun. It was like, you raise the vibration to this frequency that is just joy. And how can that not help but heal?
I looked up on Spotify, and I've just found it there.
Yes.
So just for anyone watching the video.
Actually.
But yeah, just go check out Dr. Heather Uncensored, and episode 12, Dr. Graves, We Can Heal Your Disease, a radio play. So go have a listen to that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
I love doing that. So this one, between bouts of tears and crying, I really, this is an hour. I think Dr. Graves is like 30 minutes, but this one is an hour and 45 minutes. And if you only have time to do the first 5 or 10 minutes, do the beginning and do the ending, because I just love doing Hannah Arendt. I think for these times it was perfect. It was trying to teach people, be like Hahnemann, take a risk. You know the story of Hahnemann, I'm sure, that he was thrown into prison, and then some government official allowed him to take over the psychiatric hospital. And that was the first gentle approach to healing mental illness. But he was not just fined, but he was sent to prison because he wasn't following rules, and he just kept doing things. And so in that I try to say, and Hannah says, yes, we need to think about what Hahnemann did. We need to be more like that. We need to take more risks, and we need to stand up for ourselves. I don't know what's going to happen to even my podcast being in North America. Canada is on a very bad state.
I was about to ask you about that because there's all sorts of, I was in Canada actually 20 years ago now, 2006. I did a year there on a working holiday visa. But it just sounds like things have been going a little bit wacky. And I know that you said that, you're happy to be out of LA and back in Vancouver, but I don't know. It's hard to know the things that are shared in the media these days, whether it's true or not. But especially with your MAID, with the medical assisted death, and and I hear stories of people whose children have gender dysphoria, who have, they can do medical procedures on the children without the parents' consent, all this stuff happening in Canada, and I'm just like, what is going on there? Is that actually happening, or is the media?
It's actually really, it's more than that, I'll tell you. But let's start with MAID, because someone just basically killed themselves through MAID because they were depressed. And I think the thing for me, I've been like this for how many years? It must be almost 40 years, 35 years that I've been in practice. The fact is, homeopathy is never tried. Natural medicine of any kind is never tried. Yes, someone is not going to get better from depression, not going to get better from so many different things that allopathic medicine is the only treatment used. And that's what really bothers me, is that we don't have some way to say, okay, you want to kill yourself, but let's just take your case first. And I'm horrified by that. And a really good place to hear people talk about that is the National Citizens Inquiry. It is NCI, I think it's NCI.ca or NCI. No, wait, it's actually written out. National Citizens Inquiry.org. I think it's org. And I did talk myself on the Flexner Report when it was in Edmonton, and have several friends there and people actually who have been on my podcast, and they put together this amazing group, and I listened to 2 different people over this 3 days at this. It's been on for quite a few times, but if you go to that website, you'll see the people who really know about MAID and how wrong it is. And we were listening to that last year, and now the legacy media is starting to talk about it, because I think people are starting to be horrified.
I've just hopped on a website here, so nationalcitizensinquiry.ca, and it says, "Are farmers safe in Canada?"
Yes, that's it. .ca. Okay. Yeah, I apologize. Yeah. And so there's a next one. The next one is this week. A good friend of mine is going to be there, being one of the commissioners, and yes, that's it. Yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah. Are farmers safe in Canada? So the last one was, are children safe in Canada? And then, of course, before that one was about what happened with COVID. And you get all these experts as well as lay people talking about what their experience was. And it's absolutely one of the most fantastic organizations ever. But then gender dysphoria, I just don't understand why people think that they have to have their body parts removed because they're feeling that they want to, I see people who really want to have more power in society. So they change from female to male. Males to female, they want to have more feelings, and just be who you are. Why are they doing this? Children are always changing and changing and changing. I just think it shows how bad conventional therapy is. It's just not, to me, I've been getting so angry since I think I was 15 years old, because you just know that it's not the right way to treat. It's not a humane way to treat. And then, okay, so what else is, the other thing that's really too bad, because I've always honored the Indigenous people here, and I still do, but their chief and their council have really done a job in terms of, first of all, a chief said that there were 215 children that were killed at one of the residential schools. I don't know if you had residential schools in Australia, but, there was good and bad, of course, with residential schools. But to say that children were murdered when they found no body, it's all across Canada at all these different residential schools. There's not one body that's been found, and yet they've been given $12 million to dig these graves up, and they won't, because they know there isn't anything. And that's really, to me, it's really dishonored the honor of Indigenous people, because I'm sure that most of the people, they don't want that, but the chief, it's a scam. And I feel terrible even having to talk about it, but that's the truth, and I'm after truth. That's always been really important to me.
how do we balance our energy and how do we use our energy for good and not get dragged down by it? Because it's so easy to then go into that vibration of fear and overwhelm and anxiety and not being able to do anything with that. So yeah, it's a fine balance, right? Being informed, but
It
at the
is.
same time, staying in a place where you can actually do something with it. In fact, I often feel really bad about eating meat. And I love animals. I
Right.
feel bad about eating meat. And then somebody once said to me, it's what you do with the energy of that animal that you've eaten. So if you do decide to eat meat, that's going to give you more energy than what you would get from plant-based food. And so you need to use that energy for good in the world. And I was like, okay,
Yes.
I can do that. I can like
Yeah.
have my steak and then use that energy from the steak to create good work in the world. And so
Right.
trying to find this balance of knowing about all of this and then helping where we can and not getting overwhelmed by it, but still being informed at the same time. So I don't know, maybe you have some advice maybe, but this is where expressive arts come in. Maybe if we're able to like move through, like what do we do with these emotions that we have and these frustrations that we have about these things happening around us? How do we turn that into something good?
That's exactly why I have the doing the radio plays and just getting people, like say in Graves' disease, I realized that I had to sing every day if I really wanted to keep that at bay. It just energizes the chakra here, the throat chakra. So that's when I started thinking, okay, singing is so important. And there's a Russian doctor that also says that. It's in my book. So that's when I wrote Transforming Trauma, a drugless and creative way to heal PTS and ACE, which is adverse childhood experiences. And I realized how important it was to get the story. So with naturopathic medicine, you're balancing the biochemistry. And with the expressive arts, you're telling or reframing the story, which is so important. And that can be so creative because you get to understand the points of trauma. So that is why I wrote that book. And it goes through writing, art, acting, voice, movement, and just sculpture could be just whatever works for you to tell the story is just so important. And that is so much more fun than taking pills. It's more insightful than taking pills. And that's why I make sure to do fun things every day. And I meditate in the morning and I make sure that no matter what I am hearing, that I sing and I dance and I, hear it's so beautiful. You can walk in the woods. It's just like a fairy tale. So much inspiration to be creative and to write stories and to just use your imagination, because I don't think people realize how important that is.
It's so important, especially to get that message through to our young people who are on social media a lot. And I find myself do that every now and again. I get stuck on social media and I'll watch somebody do pottery on social media, or like a little reel on somebody creating something in pottery. Instead of going and doing pottery, or I'll watch some dancing, somebody doing a dancing reel, instead of actually going and doing dancing myself. So it's so important that we are active and moving. Like, that's actually my theme for this year, is to dance more. So we've just been to the Nanup Music Festival where we had a free homeopathy stand and I got to do some dancing there. I've managed to I say con because a friend of mine into hosting a monthly dance group for us, because I said to her, I really want to dance every month. Can we do this together? And then as we were chatting, I realized that she's actually the one that's got all the equipment and everything. So I said, can you just do it you organize it and I'll just make sure there's people. So I managed to do that. I'm really happy. And she's happy because she loves doing this, but just getting more opportunity for movement, because I've realized that is something that is so important.
Well, it's so important for your circulation. I mean, because the circulation is what brings oxygen in the tissues. So if you're just sitting there, it's all part of the expressive arts, homeopathy, natural medicine, cold water. I mean, everything is, you start to learning to integrate it, and it's just this dance that you have with yourself to be able to interface with these elemental treatments that are so beautiful.
I'm intrigued with your different voices, though, because we get told if you've got lots of different voices in your head, it's maybe not such a good thing. But you clearly turned this into something therapeutic. So why do you think it is therapeutic about having different characters that live inside of you?
That's a very good question. They all get to have their role. I remember I had such great patients, I have to say, where I had my clinic here in Kitsilano in Vancouver. I remember this person came and she said, and it was that time that we used to talk about the inner child, and she said, one child, I have a whole damn nursery in there.
I love that.
So from that, I did this work on myself, and I realized that there was a 6-year-old and 11-year-old that were really, the 6-year-old was really mad because she wanted tap shoes on and dancing, and she was really a happy kid. But then by the time she was 11, something happened, and she was sad. So what I did for myself, because I always like trying things for myself before I try with my patients, is I would put them on my lap and just hold them. And I would have to say to the little one, the 5-year-old or 6-year-old, I'm really sorry. Let's just kind of hang out with this. And the other one, the 11-year-old, she just told me how sad she was. And so we worked it through. I know it sounds schizophrenic or whatever, but multiple personality, but it just worked, and it worked with my patients. And one of the tricks that I find is, or I forget what it's called, there is something that's called this, is you take your pulse and you go back to, say, when you were even in utero, and you count it up, and you're, okay, so I'm not sure that I explained this properly, but say I was working with you. I would say, okay, let's go back to when you were in utero. Give me your hand, your wrist, and I'm going to feel your pulse. And we go up 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 4 years. Oh, 4 years, and then it just starts, you can feel it. You can feel something happening there. Something happens, so you go back in and you're able to trace that. So it's much easier if you can say, okay, now if something happened at 4, we need to go in and track that and figure it out. Why don't we just call this person something? And why don't you just have that child sit on your lap? So that's how it all came. And it was so helpful to me. I guess it was the 6-year-old and the 11-year-old that I would just do constantly to try to get through. The 11-year-old was just so sad. And when I'd go back to the 6-year-old, she was just so happy. Okay, how are we going to get back to this happy place? And working with people, I was always doing visualization. I was informed, and I did workshops with the man who wrote Tracking, the holotropic, what was his name? Vern Wolf. And he's a marriage and family therapist. And he would have you sitting in a circle, and you were like a whole group, like you were a family. So each person would be your aunt or your mother, and you would be able to understand.
Like a family constellation?
That's it, yeah. And so then it was like psychodrama, and I would take that into my workshops, the days long, and understand what that meant to you. And it was fun, and it was psychodrama. I wanted to be an actor. When I was a teenager, I wanted to be an actor, and then I was sexually abused, raped, and I changed paths. I could not do that because I'm not going to go out in the world and be an actor and unveil myself when I had this terrible pain inside. So really what happened to me is that I started just going in a really different direction, but I'd always had it in me that I wanted to do it. And now I do voiceovers, and I did just get a really fantastic acting agent, so I'm sure hobbies are.
Can you also run us through some of your books? Because you've got, I think there's about 3 different books, hey? So you've got there's the acting, and there's books and the podcast.
Yeah. So the first book I wrote was a novel called Flawed, and that was a family saga about mental illness, and also had Indigenous First Nation in Canada and Celtic culture. And there was a woman that was a painter in the family, and she could see things like fairies and stuff, and she had a terrible relationship with her mother. And so I wrote that because I got burned out. I had been treating so many people that had mental emotional issues and had been sexually abused, so it was my outlet. And at the end of writing it, I realized, wow, I could see my father, I could see my mother, I could see my brother. It was just really fun. So I made that into an audiobook last summer, the summer before, I guess, and I really want to get it up on the screen. I want to do an episodic because it would bring out these themes of mental illness and artist or mentally ill or just so many different things, natural medicine. So I'm hoping somehow that someone will say, oh, we'd like to fund that for you. And then the next one I wrote during the very early time of COVID. It's called Surviving a Viral Pandemic Through the Lens of a Naturopathic Medical Doctor. And that one I was just teaching people about cells and about the immune system, and then goes through a lot of things until you get to a good diet and the botanicals you could use like lomatium and different things that people didn't know about. It's too bad it's called that because it sounds like it's only good for a pandemic, but it really is good for if you want to change your diet and really understand what's going on with your immune system and being able to empower yourself through nutrition and herbs and homeopathy. So that was more like a physical. And then I thought I had such a good practice in terms of helping people with trauma that I had developed all this, the expressive arts as well, sitting on the foundation of naturopathic medicine. So balance the biochemistry and tell or reframe the story. That's Transforming Trauma. That's the book. And my husband, who, as I said, was a musician, I asked him, could you just look at this one chapter and please, I really need help with this chapter. And so he started doing it as a composer. It was just really beautiful, back and forth, because you bring in the A and then the B and then the A again and then the C. And unfortunately, though, the publisher, she was right to do that, but she had to put it back into sort of more normal way of presenting a chapter. But I couldn't get him to stop editing the rest of the book, and I'd say, Avi, stop, I just asked you for one chapter. And there he goes, and he just loved it. He loved editing the whole the expressive arts chapters, and he really did help me lay out exactly what someone say, for music, what you should be doing to plug in that way. Yeah, that was really a wonderful memory for me in terms of that book. But the book really, I'm very grateful for that book. Unfortunately, it came out the same month that he went into the hospital, so we were not able to, it's published by Hammersmith Books, but for some reason the publicist also went into the hospital at that time. This was before COVID. This was it was after. When was it? No, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. But anyway, she went into the hospital and we never got it out there. So that's what happened to that book. And the other one I got is Sting of Absence. That is a sequel to Flawed, but it takes place on the other side of Canada with the Acadians, and that became Cajuns in Louisiana. And that has a lot of homeopathy in it because it has all about New Orleans with the epidemics. And I love doing that because it really showed you what was happening in terms of those epidemics and how homeopathy really excelled. And there's stats for that. It was actually documented back in 1859 or whatever. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. It's actually quite amazing if you go through the history of all the epidemics around the world and how homeopathy has helped.
I know.
It's really
amazing.
It's something that was more common knowledge.
And for me too, when I first started practicing, I was like, a person got better with homeopathy? What? Huh? Does it really work? And then you just see it over and over again, and it's amazing. So I understand why people don't understand it because we're so mechanistic based. But when you see it, and I think it's the most important medicine, even before I would do the expressive art stuff, I will always make sure that someone's on a remedy. And it's so good for mental, emotional issues. I think it's the most important. Sure, nutrition is, but nutrition, people, when they're in a place that are a difficult place, they want their comfort foods. It's not always easy to get them off certain foods. So homeopathy can just work like magic.
And then somewhere along all of this, you must have pissed some people off because apparently you're not on Facebook either. So because I was going to ask you to give us all your social media handles and stuff, but I see you've been booted off Facebook and LinkedIn as well.
Yes, I had 1,500 people on LinkedIn.
Yeah, what did you do?
Well, I guess I post my podcasts because I was warning people about not taking the COVID vaccine.
I got booted off YouTube as well, and actually had a few, so for a couple of years. But then as soon as Trump came in and RFK and they started talking, so it was maybe about 6 months ago they reinstated my YouTube channel. But I'd already started another one at that stage, and so we didn't want to run too. The old one's still there, but we're not updating it with new episodes. It's just annoying. It's so inconvenient because there were 300 videos. There were 300 videos on there, and they just took it all. I had zero access to it.
It off.
The videos were all backed up, but I had just overnight lost all access to all of that. But we're all in our little illusion that our content's safe, but it's not. It can be taken away at any second. It's annoying. Podcasting seems to be pretty okay. I heard that Robert Scott Bell. I heard that he said that he was banned off Spotify, which I had actually never heard about Spotify banning anyone.
Yes, I had Peter Bregan. He's an incredible psychiatrist. He was the one that was talking about love and gentleness. And years ago, I had his book on my office desk for a long time. And that episode I did with Peter, Spotify said, we're not allowing that because he wrote, what was it called? Yeah, he and Ginger, his wife, wrote COVID-19 and the global threat or something. I've
Oh, wow.
forgotten now.
Now, I won't be
the
surprised if
title.
my podcast is censored of some sort because I used to get a crazy amount of downloads. And then it was probably about 2 years ago. I wonder if it was not actually around the same time the YouTube was taken down, but my listenership just dropped. It was really weird, but it's
Oh,
still in the
that's
top 1% in the world. I think
wow.
it would
That's
have been higher. So
amazing.
I do wonder sometimes if it's getting shadow banned. I don't know. I'm just recording it anyway, and hopefully whoever needs to find it will find it.
Right.
That's
But it is
what I
frustrating.
hope.
Like
Mm.
I went back on Facebook and I created a new one, and they told me I couldn't have that one either. That's just a couple months ago.
Really?
And then
Wow.
so I'm like, okay, forget it. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
There was something I felt like there was. Instagram is okay though.
So you're Dr. Heather Herington on Instagram, and your website
Yes.
is drheatherherington.com, and
Yes. And
Dr.
on the
Heather
website,
Uncensored on the podcast.
yes, the podcast Dr. Heather Uncensored, and that's hosted by Buzz. You can't find it anywhere else.
Okay.
Buzzsprout.com. They are fantastic people.
I've
Um,
heard good things about them. Yeah.
Oh, they are
I'll let
really
someone else
good.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very helpful. And they come to my rescue when when
I know
need
they've
it.
got a good Facebook page as well. I used to be in their Facebook group. I used to be in their
Oh, is that
Facebook
right?
group where they give free advice if you get stuck with your podcast.
Yeah, no, they're great. And I just want to say that on my website, the telephone number is incorrect. I'm trying
Okay.
to fix my website, but the person that was doing it went to Spain, and we're not able to change.
That's okay. This
My,
episode
uh,
won't come out for about 6 or 7 weeks anyway because I'm booked so far
Oh.
in advance at the moment. So hopefully the phone number is fixed by then.
Yeah, but it may or may not. So
Okay.
anyways, that
So best
number's
to
not
email
correct.
you. Okay.
Yeah,
No worries.
yeah.
Now,
Exactly.
is there any final message that you want to leave our listeners with?
Just don't give up. Don't go down into despair. Really find something you love to do, whether it's sing or dance or make a sandcastle, something that's
Sandcastle.
imaginative, and tap into the wonderful things that are on this earth. There's so much that's so exciting, so much. And people want to bring you down, or people want to say that you're not doing the right thing. Only you know what you're doing is right. And only you can really just connect with nature and connect with beautiful art and music, and make sure you lift yourself up every day.
That's a beautiful message. I have nothing to add to that, so I'll just say it's lovely to chat with you. And
Oh, it's great. It's
thank you
great,
so much for your
Regina.
time.
Yeah, thank you.
All the best. Thanks, Heather. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.